All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. It is Friday, the free-for-all. I hope you'll join me. I've been asking and I've been imploring. Maybe there just aren't that many people watching live. I hate to say it. I hate to admit it. Our numbers are going up. I know a lot of you watch on delay, after the show's over. And I've seen some of the other hosts get many more people watching live. So I hope we get to that point, and we can get there if you start focusing on trying to watch live if you can, just to weigh in, because really I think the program is better. I think it's more interesting, more compelling when I've got you to talk to. And I love speaking to great folks like Chuck Pinocchio yesterday. Liz was on Wednesday. We have Arlen Mondays, and we'll have him again this Monday. May have to change the time. May have to do a little wiggling around with the time for Monday's program, but we'll go forward right after St. Patty's Day. On Sunday. A little potty joke there, because of course Arlen wrote his book Life of the Potty. Let's start with my good friends. They're awesome at Climate Defiance. I've been depressed lately. I'll be frank. I mean, things are really, really awful. They are. I mean, it's very hard to find positive stuff to talk. Well, I don't look for it. I can say it's hard to find positive things to discuss. I don't look for positive things to discuss on Halitics. Every now and then, if there's a feel-good story, I sure want to share it with you, because it sucks to just talk about all the bad things that are happening in the world. But we got to try to change it, right? I mean, we have just such a short time on this veil, and we should enjoy ourselves as best we can, but we also should try to make things a little better, or at least not worse. Oh yeah, click subscribe. I don't think I said that. Maybe I did. I do want to get, yeah, please. That's what we need here, is more subscribers, more than anything else, on Halitics. So I hope you'll do that, and I don't have my little subscribe button right this second. I'll get to it. Here is from our good friends at Climate Defiance. We stormed. This is from, I think, Wednesday. What does it says? March 12th. So that would be Tuesday. This is in NYC. We stormed Chevron CEO Mike Wirth's interview at a corporate diversity event. He was on the role of engaged men in gender inclusivity. We chase him out because he's not a man. He's a sick leech, and if he's engaged in anything, it's killing. And then they identify women of color. Well, it's lots of different people. I mean, Chevron is as bad as anyone when it comes to the absolute destruction of the Amazonia. The lungs of the world are just being burned up, and of course, it's a double-barrel disaster, because they're ripping apart the Amazon, which generates, and has generated in the past a lot more O2, oxygen for us to breathe. They're ripping up the plants, the vegetation that transfers CO2, transforms it from CO2 through the process, I guess, of, I'm not really sure how that all works with the plants, where they get the sunlight and they convert the sunlight, which is CO2, and they take the CO2 out of the air and they put oxygen back. Suffice it to say, that's kind of what happens, I guess. But of course, with fewer plants, fewer vegetation, mature vegetation, rainforest, there's less O2 being generated, being created, that we need to breathe, the animals that we need to breathe. And of course, they're also using, they're ripping apart the Amazonia so they can get at the oil, the crude underneath. And by burning it, they're using up the oxygen that we have less of, and causing more devastation to the environment. So Mike Wirth is a genocidal, I don't know if I'd say he's a maniac, but he's genocidal for sure. He's not like a Hitler. I mean, Hitler was deluded, right? Hitler, really, I guess, maybe really believed that some Jews were out there to get him, and were some demonic force throughout the world, the U.S., and the Aryan race was some special. That's, he was crazy. He was a nut. Mike Wirth is doing this for out of greed. He's just a sociopath. He's not schizophrenic. He doesn't hear voices. He's just a sociopath. Just puts his own interests and his family's, and no one else matters even a little tiny bit. All right, so let's go to our good friends. Here they are. Let's see if we can get that video. I hope this will play correctly. Here we go.
night knowing you're a mass murderer.
Mike, you piece of shit! You're killing people! Fuck you, Mike!
Chevron is responsible for killing thousands of indigenous women and exposing thousands more to cancer and reproductive illness. You are not an ally of women. You are a murderer.
Women and children are suffering at your hands, and you're here accepting a DEI award.
Chevron is also increasing off.
Yeah, I want to just stop it there for a sec. So they're pointing out there's a group, whatever it is, and I'm not quite clear what organization was giving him this DEI award, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the activists there, this is in New York City, are just saying this is absolutely absurd. You're poisoning the indigenous people in Amazonia. You're killing them. You lie. And you're also complicit in Israel's genocide in Gaza. So this is where we are. This is how completely effed up our country is, our society is, where there's this pink washing, right? Oh, you're a friend of women. There's this pink washing. And I think usually the term pink washing is more reserved for, when Israel says, oh, we're a gay-friendly destination, right? So they're pink washing the evil that they do to Palestinians, the killing and oppressing and persecuting, including gay Palestinians. So they're pink washing. But, I'll use the term pink washing here. You got a pink background as well. And Code Pink refers to women who are out there fighting against war, endless war. So here they're pink washing. Mike Wirth is being pink washed. And it's disgusting. It's nauseating. These elite organizations that purport to speak for women are really selling them down the river, are betraying them.
Offshore gas drilling with Israel in the midst of a genocide against the Palestinian people. How do you sleep at
it
night?
must be so uncomfortable. You're sitting up there, but this guy's probably worth a few $100 million. And I certainly have no sympathy for him. But it must be a little bit uncomfortable. And what can you do? I mean, he is totally beholden to his board, right? If he spoke out and said, you know what, you're right. I have dedicated my life to evil. I am responsible for destroying our planet. I am so sorry. Thank you for calling me out. I'm going to try to be better for my family, for my children, for all of us. I'm going to right now start speaking out against the oil and gas industry that has made me so rich. And I'm going to actually disgorge my ill-gotten gains, except for, maybe a couple million, so my family will be totally secure. That would be such a wonderful, honorable thing to do. He can't even, if he did that, he would get sued immediately by his board. So he's really kind of in a bad spot, but you put yourself there and I don't have any sympathy for you, you piece of garbage.
Billions of dollars in damages for poisoning the Ecuadorian rainforest.
And what's sort of cool about that is that there's applause from the audience, right? Like the audience is like, yeah, go, right? Because they're there, presumably they're pro-women. It's a pro-women group, presumably, and maybe they don't agree with what their elites are doing. Maybe, or at least when it's pointed out to them that their elites are, honoring a climate criminal, a climate genocidal sociopath. So maybe they're like, yeah, go. We don't like what you're doing, Mike Wirth. They say this is a gender inclusivity event. I'm not clear where this is from. Yeah, because I read the article in Salon after the fact. Salon's not really so great, right? I mean, I don't like Salon. But I thought, well, maybe they'll tell me where it was, but they didn't quite identify the organization. I'm not clear why either. You'd think Salon would have. I mean, but they didn't. So there it is. Yeah, this is just, typical. But I think this is sort of what we've come down to, because I don't know what good it does. Like I said, I mean, it's sort of fun. It's kind of some kind of like, kind of a guerrilla attack on this guy. So you sort of feel good in the moment, but is it going to change anything? I don't think so. And I maybe it will, but I doubt it. I hope it will, but I don't think it will. Joe Biden's still all in for Israel. He could lose the election. His numbers in Michigan are not good. This could his support for Israel could cost him the election, but he's not changing. There's a little rhetorical, shades that weren't there. That's it. So here, let's finish this off with Mike Wirth. And by the way, I'd love to hear what you think. Is this worth doing? Are they doing the right thing, these activists? 240. Let me make sure I get the right. What is 240? Do you think it would be a good idea, right? That's the question.
It would be a good idea to invite this man here.
Mike lies, women die. Mike lies, women die.
And now they drive him out. And then there's a little afterwards, and it's a little shoving. They pushed some of the activists around.
Where will Chevron pay the bill? The spill! Clean the motherfucking spill! Clean the spill! Clean the...
So, way to go, Climate Defiance. Really good job. You did make Mike Wirth uncomfortable. I guess there's some karma there, if nothing else. You made a really bad person, someone, and, bad, maybe he's got, nice to his dog, gives treats to little children. I'm not saying he doesn't have personable skills. He's a bad person because what he does, because he causes so much harm, so much devastation. That's why he's a bad person, because of what he does. And if he's made a little bit uncomfortable, I guess there's some karma there. I mean, I guess that's a good thing. It's hard to really take much else out of that, but I'd like to hear from you. Do you think this is is it worth it? I say it is. I'm glad they did it. I'm happy to platform Climate Defiance, but I wonder again, what's the real ultimate impact? And I'm not sure it's much. I talked yesterday, so we'll move on to the next topic. Let's get to the polling a little bit. Was there a SotU bounce, a State of the Union bounce? And my initial thought when I didn't watch it, right? Well, I watched little snippets, but, the media was so positive. The New York Times, there was whoever else, Krugman, he's put to rest any of those absurd claims that he's too old. That was what Paul Krugman's takeaway. Arlen was, very much a fan, thought he did a really nice job there. Biden, he pulled his chestnuts out of the fire, if you will. So I heard that, and I watched, snippets of the SotU. That was a week ago yesterday, right? Thursday the 7th. And I thought, yeah, I'll bet Biden gets a bounce, because I've also not been one of those people who believed that, this election is Trump's to lose and Trump's going to win it and Trump isn't. I was always like, I don't know. Trump's not really that popular. There's a lot of, a lot of people really are afraid of Trump. The Trump derangement syndrome isn't completely deranged. There's something to it. I mean, there's reasons to be, afraid of Trump for sure. I mean, in terms of, let me say it this way. I think a lot of the policies that Joe Biden pursues are just as bad. In some areas, we'll get to it. Some areas, the Democrats are worse than Republicans, which we'll get to later on this program. But in terms of having the at least illusion of democracy, where we vote every 4 years for the president, where we actually get to presumably have say over who our legislators are, that kind of is arguably in danger if Trump is elected. I kind of buy that. I don't want to state it. I don't want to be hyperbolic, but yeah, this guy clearly doesn't care much about democracy or at all. I think the argument he doesn't want democracy, he doesn't like democracy. And, you could say that for all of the presidents. I mean, clearly Joe Biden doesn't really want to hear what we have to say. But Trump's worse. I mean, even, W left office. This is a torturer. W is a torturer. And he, voluntarily left office. So you got to worry. Yeah. So I figured, and I think most people do, I think even Trump supporters, there's this nagging worry, maybe. They don't care that much. Their lives suck. The trade deals that both parties have championed, that Trump is the only one who's ever really spoken out against in recent times, endless war, which the Democrats champion now even more than the Republicans, have devastated working people. And they're like, this democracy thing ain't working for us. So even if Trump wants to take it away, it's not really doing much for us anyway. That said, yeah, people want to choose their leaders, right? Freedom is a nice thing to have. And even if it's mostly illusory, there's some real freedom still in our country. So I figured Biden presents reasonably well on TV, speaks for an hour, talks, his speech is almost certainly calibrated to push people's buttons in a way that will cause them to be more inclined to support him. I figured he'd see a little bit of an election post-SotU bounce. And I went through the polls. Yesterday, we talked about them with Chuck Pinocchio, and I didn't really see any bounce because there have been polls since the State of the Union last week. And I didn't see much, and I did some more digging today, this morning. And I've got to tell you, my answer is going to be a little bit unsatisfying, right? Because my initial thought, after I looked at a few polls, my initial conclusion was no state SotU bounce. I thought there would be. Like I said, I thought so, but then I thought, I was wrong. He really didn't benefit much, meaning Biden, that the Democrats really didn't get much out of it. And, here is Ohio, right? So I showed there hasn't been a lot of polling in Ohio. I think that the reason for that is because it's not really considered a swing state anymore, right? It used to be. I think Obama did win Ohio in 2008, right? But that was the last time a Democrat won. Ohio, by the way, Obama won Iowa. Obama won Indiana. All those deplorables in the heartland who supposedly would never support, or only in it love Trump because he's a racist, is the argument you hear, is absurd. Obviously, they voted for the black guy. But since then, because the economic situation in those states has not really improved, especially in Ohio and Indiana, and especially not for working people, they have not come back to the Democrats since then. In Ohio, the poll that came out post-SotU there, two polls came out, Emerson and ECU, and they both showed Trump with 9-point lead. There was an old Emerson poll from back in November, but really you're not seeing much movement is the bottom line, right? And I think the Emerson poll, the first one you see there, was from the 7th through the 10th. And so the first 2 days of that poll would have been, or at least the first day of that poll would have been before the State of the Union. The State of the Union was on the 7th. And yet, even the subsequent poll showed a little bit of a movement for Trump. So at least in Ohio, you don't really see much or any improvement for Biden. And I looked at also this Michigan results, and again, it looked pretty much the same, right? That there wasn't really any change, that Biden hadn't gotten any kind of a bounce. And I looked at that and I thought, he's got to be really worried because he needs Michigan. Michigan is really, really important, I think. I think it's, Pennsylvania, states that Biden's got to win. I would say Michigan and Pennsylvania. Look, I hate all the horse race talk crap, what have you. So I'm not going to overdo it. I don't want to bore you to tears, and I'm not like an expert. But, it seems pretty clear that this is a really important state for him. And if you look, the one poll that came out after the State of the Union, the Quinnipiac came out, which was conducted the 8th through the 12th, so all after the State of the Union on the 7th. Trump's in the same place he was. In fact, he's doing a little better. Even if the gap isn't as big, he's at 48% to Biden's 45%. The Bloomberg poll, the polls that were conducted in February are right in that same range, 2, 4, 2. So no change. No change, right? I mean, it's just not helping. Trump didn't really get helped. And the national polls all were about the same, 2, 3, 4 for Trump. So it's close. It's really, really close. It's far from over. But right now, Trump's got a little bit of a lead, and Biden didn't see much of a State of the Union bounce. That said, and I don't have the polls, I'm sorry, I looked towards the end, I looked at Arizona. A poll came out in Arizona, it showed a narrowed gap. It showed that Trump was doing a little bit better after the State of the Union. It helped him. Or if it didn't help him, something happened, or maybe it was just the polls. I mean, who knows? But something happened in Arizona that caused a poll result to suggest that maybe just, well, not really. Well, let me show it. I might as well show it just so we can go through this real quick. Because that's a state, Arizona, that actually Biden won. So it becomes really relevant because this is a state that, had always been red for ever, I guess since Ronald Reagan, and now was flipped. But so if you look at that data point, it would it suggests really no real change. I don't know. Must have been one poll, but so just to end it, no real State of the Union bounce as far as I can tell. The Fox poll has Trump up 4, which is in line with the other polls in February. The Fox poll that was mostly conducted after the State of the Union. Bloomberg shows Trump with a little bit of a bigger lead, 6, but the Hill was 3. So yeah, it's not really much movement is what we're seeing. The State of the Union not really shifting the dial. I'll show one more poll, then I'm going to get into the conversation about this for a bit. I'd love to hear from you, 240-242-5646. I do want to show. So this poll, if any poll would scare me, if any set of data, if any data points would scare me, if I were the president's advisor, it would be this. It would be these results. This is from the Silver State here, Nevada, which has lately been trending blue, right? It's kind of a union state, the confectionaries union there, and in Vegas, very powerful. And you see Trump with a pretty significant lead all the way through. Now, we don't have a March poll since the SotU, and I'd love to see one. But if I'm Trump, I'm looking at that poll. I'm pretty damn happy. Biden's losing states he has to win. And it's not just he's losing a whole bunch of states, and if he wins any one of those, he wins. It's more like he's got to win a lot of them, and he's losing all of them. He's got to win Michigan. He's got to win Nevada. He's got to win Arizona, I think, or Georgia, or one, especially if he's not going to win Wisconsin, he's not going to win Ohio. And he's not doing well in a lot of those states. Pennsylvania's a dead heat, or he's behind in Pennsylvania. That's Biden. So it is not panic time. It's not hair on fire time if you're a Democratic strategist. But I will say this, these numbers to me are more worrisome than I had if I were a Democrat, and I'm not. I mean, I am worried about Trump winning, but then I'm also worried about Biden winning. It's important to me that Biden and the Democrats be sent a message. Now, I know people say, oh, send a message and we all suffer. We suffer either way. We suffer regardless. We lose regardless of whether Trump or Biden wins. But there is probably some room in the Democratic Party for some movement to the left. Trump's gone, Trump's a right-wing demagogic populist. So on some issues, he does have some decent policies. I mean, we talked about the tariff. It's really good. The tariffs are good. But, he's not good. He's bad. And he's not someone who's going to respond much to public opinion. Maybe the Democrats can be swayed. I've heard that a lot. I haven't seen much evidence of it. I have not seen them really doing the right thing, except maybe when they're doing the wrong thing, but they'll do the right thing kind of to pink wash the bad actions. If you're concerned about Trump, you should be worried. And I think this does give strength to the arguments we've heard both from Arlen and Chuck who believe very strongly that the most important thing to do is to defeat Trump. We have to beat Trump. They're full on anti-Trump people, and they're concerned. So yeah. All right, I want to get we've got a lot of topics to get to. So here's Israel, and it's terrible. It's just as bad as it's Ramadan. This is a holy time. There was a lot of hope, I think misplaced perhaps, but there was hope that Israel would at least take its foot off the gas, right? A little less killing. And so far, not good at all. So far, that hope is completely vain. Let's get this video in. This is from a few days ago, I believe Tuesday.
Israeli airstrikes killed at least 67 people in Gaza on the first day of Ramadan,
I believe that was
according to
Sunday.
the Gazan Health Ministry. The strikes continue as hundreds of Palestinians begin celebrating Ramadan, a month normally associated with joy and celebration. UNRWA has called for a ceasefire during the month of Ramadan, citing widespread hunger and calling the situation in the north of Gaza tragic. It is estimated that around 80% of Gaza's population have been displaced since the start of the war. And
so 80% displacement, to me, sounds like genocide. And I will use the word genocide. I generally call it genocidal acts, but it's genocide, right? If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And in this case, 80% displaced, 67 people killed on a holy day in Palestine, 30,000+ dead. Netanyahu has said there's going to be no let up until Hamas is completely wiped out. And of course, that means the entire country's occupied and they go house to house pretty much and kill, how many tens, hundreds of thousands of people. So yeah, genocide.
supplies of food and water are scarce, with many families living off one meal a day. In response to the first day of Ramadan, Egypt has delivered aid via air into northern Gaza.
All right, so there it is. It's as bad as it can be. I mean, I guess, no. I mean, there aren't death camps, right? It's not Auschwitz. So I guess if you want to say that's worse, it is, okay? But I don't like to compare atrocities. What Israel's doing now is an atrocity. And to try to diminish it or minimize the horror by invoking an arguably worse horror doesn't really, doesn't move me. It just sickens me is what it does. In fact, when you look at what the Nazis did, the Nazi Holocaust, you kind of see similarities, right? I mean, it's not like there are so many differences. It's more like this is another Holocaust. Like I refer to the climate Holocaust, and this is a genocidal, not Holocaust exactly, because, well, I guess there aren't the death camps, but it's a genocide nevertheless. All right, you're watching Halitics, you're listening to Halitics. I do hope you'll subscribe. You just saw my subscription button there, so please do subscribe now. And more on the issue of, is this indeed some form of genocide? And I think what Elizabeth told me, or maybe it was Elizabeth said, or maybe it was Chuck, genocide also does include destroying cultural artifacts and, eliminating a group of people's historical knowledge and sense of themselves. And that is what Israel is doing. March 13th, this is Jacobin. Beyond the 30,000 people that they've killed, they're also deliberately destroying Gaza's rich cultural heritage, mosques and churches, to libraries and children's theaters. And I mentioned that it's not just Muslims, right? It's also Christians. I believe, I hope that people who are truly religious, truly have faith, would speak out against genocide. There were some, not nearly enough, not nearly as many as there should have been. There were some priests, there were some pastors in Germany who spoke out against the Holocaust. There were a few. There have been some rabbis speaking out against what Israel's doing, and I honor what they are doing, and I honor them. There are educators of Jewish background who are speaking out against what Israel's doing. But sadly, the louder voices, it seems, the voices that we hear, that we see in the media, sadly, seem far more protective of Israel and far more defensive in terms of their readiness to call out critics of Israel's crimes, and their readiness to call them anti-Semitic. So I did watch this video here. This is from The Hill Rising, obviously, as you can see. I think his name is Prem. He's a young journalist who covers college events, college actions, and he talked about the situation in Columbia University with Brianna Joy Gray and Robbie Swabe there. So let's play just a little bit of this, and the clip is going to be from I don't know if he's the provost or some high-level big shot at Columbia.
Confronted. A lot of students have felt that that basic question has just been dismissed.
Maybe we
so
should
just let me stop that. The basic question he's talking about is, what is anti-Semitism? Because they created this anti-Semitic task force at Columbia to confront and to fight the scourge of anti-Semitism that is just destroying the campus and is so hurtful. I'm not going to play the whole video, but you know what's really ugly and awful about this is there's no anti-Islamic bigotry task force. There's no task force to try to fight or weed out Islamophobia, which is a far greater problem, which has actually led to injuries, and there's been violence documented on this campus and elsewhere. And it's not just like what happened in Cornell, where one nut threatened some Jews online. This has been coordinated actions against Muslims on college campuses. Professors, right, at Harvard who followed a Palestinian woman and attacked her verbally. That we're seeing, and Columbia, apparently they don't care. They don't care. Here's the more from Rising.
Get into one of these bits of leaked audio because, you know, this really does, I think, put a fine point on it and cuts through some of the he said, she said. People can judge for themselves. Let's take a listen. Again, This is Gerald Roseberg, who is the vice president of the university.
I think when these protests go on, there is a lot of the rhetoric in the protests that is extremely, extremely upsetting. All
right, so he's, it's so upsetting. The rhetoric at the protests, these people, these Palestinians and their supporters coming together and, complaining about how they're being bombed, how innocent people are being killed, how hospitals are being destroyed. The rhetoric is really hurtful and upsetting. Oh, poor people who don't like the rhetoric.
Many of our students.
But what are examples of that?
I think all the talk about genocide, all the talk.
Oh, let's not talk about genocide. No. Can't do that. Can't do
about
that.
Apartheid.
So, and by the way he phrases that, all the talk about genocide, it's like he's implying. When I first heard that, and I think this was deliberate ambiguity on the part of Roseberg, and if it was, it's disgusting. But my sense was he was sort of suggesting that it's the Palestinians who are calling for genocide against Israel, which is a complete lie. There's none of that. I think what he was, his plausible denial, no. It's just that they're accusing Israel of genocide. But I wasn't saying that they themselves meaning the Palestinian supporters are calling for genocide against Israel. But just when he says, all the talk about genocide, so upsetting. Well, yeah, it is upsetting if people are calling for you to be eliminated from the face of the earth because of your race, your religion. That's very upsetting. But that wasn't what was happening. What was happening was that the people at the rallies and protests were saying Israel is responsible for genocide, not we want to wipe Israel off the face of the map. They do say often from the mountains to the sea, yeah, they want Israel to be free. Gee, what a horrible sentiment. Freedom for the people, the oppressed Palestinians. Gee, what a horrible sentiment that they should be free.
State and racist state. Manoush, Shafiq, you're supporting genocide. I think if you're saying that, you don't think, why would anybody be upset about that?
Well, they would be upset. I mean, I assume they would, right? I mean, nobody wants to be told that they're complicit in some horrible crime. But I don't see, so what? Okay, people say things that are upsetting. Mike Wirth, the CEO of Chevron, probably didn't like being called a mass murderer, a genocidal, maniac for what he's doing in Amazonia. I'm sure he didn't like it. But don't we live in a country where you can call out people for their crimes? Isn't that, I mean, you can't lie. You can't say, like if they said, well, I saw Mike Wirth down in the Amazon. I saw him pouring gasoline on a grove of trees and setting it on fire without liability. You can be sued for that. So you can't lie about someone. But if you're saying, well, Israel's committing genocide, your country is an apartheid state. True, right? I mean, it's what should be upsetting to Manoush and Shafiq, who are, invoked by Roseberg. What should be upsetting to them is that their country is doing this, not that they're being called out for it.
But I think I could imagine that somebody listening to that an Israeli student being told that their state is an apartheid state, a racist state committing genocide, seems to them like an incitement of violence.
No, it's absurd. That's just ridiculous. And let me get rid of that. That's just, it's just, and I want to just make one other point here. I want to get to a little more in the story, and I want to also get to Maryland. But I did a show with Arlen where I was saying, a lot of these claims of anti-Semitism, they don't hold up under scrutiny, right? You can't really, they say there's all this anti-Semitism, it's on the rise, but it's not documented. What are you talking about? What specifically happened that you call anti-Semitic? And Arlen pushed back and he says, well, I don't think you should just say people are saying crying anti-Semitism when it's not there. But isn't that what we just saw? I mean, that's a perfect example. If you're going to say there's anti-Semitism and it's on the rise, give me the instance. What happened? Was a swastika spray painted on a synagogue? That's anti-Semitic. Were Jewish men going to shul? Were they attacked? And called the K word? That's anti-Semitic. Saying Israel's an apartheid state, that's not anti-Semitic. The person saying it might be an anti-Semite, but the statement itself is not anti-Semitic. It's like the allegations of all the rapes on October 6th. Or is it October 7th? January 6th, October 7th. I'm sorry about that. They don't hold up. There's nothing that supports it. You say, oh, you're being anti-woman and you don't believe women. It's not even, I don't believe women. There aren't any women who are saying they were raped. So if you're going to make these claims, back it up or don't make them. I'm not a fan of Democrats, but one of my two senators in the Congress, U.S. Congress, is Chris Van Hollen. I have a lot of problem with Chris Van Hollen. I don't think he's been a good senator. He hasn't championed Medicare for all, and he hasn't fought for working people, and he's been just basically an apparatchik for the Democratic Party. But he did the right thing here, and look at what happened. Listen to how he gets pushed back. I think you can see that. This is CBS News Baltimore. You see more than 70 local rabbis attacked they went after him anyway, because he's like, no, we shouldn't be supporting genocide. It was a very milquetoast, weak as water statement, but it was something.
Here at home, the senator's response is not sitting well with a large group of rabbis tonight. Denise joins us now in the studio with more on how a group of local rabbis want Senator Van Hollen to rethink his views on the war. Denise.
Well, Rick and Nikki, in a letter to the senator, more than 70 rabbis from across the state are urging Van Hollen to back Israel's defense against Hamas without any conditions or restrictions.
No conditions. No conditions. Bombs away, baby. Bombs away. That's what the rabbis are saying. Don't you expect something a little better from a faith leader? I have to admit I do. A lot of people would laugh at me and say, oh, come on, what about those priests who rape little boys and children? And how can you possibly say you expect more from them? Well, I do. I do.
The rabbis do not want Van Hollen or other lawmakers to deny Israel's military any assistance, highlighting the $14 billion in aid President Biden has called for. They say it is, quote, needed to free both Israelis and Palestinians. WJZ spoke with the leader of Baltimore's Jewish Council, Howard Libet. He says Van Hollen's recent statements are driving a wedge within the Jewish community.
No, that is just, no. It is not the statements by Van Hollen that is driving the wedge. It is the actions of Israel and the fact that there are some Jews who are saying this is wrong, this is evil, and that there are other Jews who don't like it. That's what's causing the wedge. And I know because I see it in my family. The wedge is caused by those who are defending evil and those who refuse to defend it, who refuse to justify it, who refuse to say this is okay. That's what's causing the wedge. And I do find it annoying that this is not what the media is telling us. But okay, I mean, that's the way it is. Let's see if we can get that rabbi there. I thought we had. Where is that? Maybe I play. Okay, here we go. Sorry, folks. I just lost the spot for just a sec. Here we go.
I think how he's he needs to do more to acknowledge the critical role that Hamas is playing in all of this, and that Israel absolutely has to eradicate.
So I would say to you, Rabbi, are you acknowledging the critical role that Israel is playing in the elimination of the Palestinian people? Hamas committed a crime, okay? They committed a crime against the citizens of a nation that is oppressing them, that is persecuting them, that is killing them. Still, it was a crime, but it was a crime by the weak, dispossessed against their oppressors. Are you acknowledging that? Are you acknowledging the role, Rabbi, that Israel played in creating the conditions that led to that mass murder? Are you acknowledging what Israel's doing? Because I think that's where that's what you should be worried about, Rabbi, not what other people are doing. You look at your own house first.
Hamas, because Hamas has vowed they will repeat the October 7th attacks again and again.
Well, I mean, and again, as long as Israel's going to go in and just start killing indiscriminately women and children, and men, what do you expect, Rabbi? Read your Bible. Isn't that exactly what the Hebrews did, the Israelites did? I think so.
In a statement to WJZ responding to the rabbi's letter, Senator Van Hollen said, in part, I appreciate these rabbis sharing the views they expressed in this letter. I fully support the right of Israel to defend itself and eliminate the military threat of Hamas. I also believe that a just war must be fought justly.
All right, so it's a super weak, lame-o statement in response by Van Hollen. Even when you take the most kind of common sense, not nearly strong enough position against Israel, you hear it. It's tough. I mean, I get that. See, that's why I think, and I'm not defending Biden, I'm not excusing Biden, but he's in a tough spot. If he were even remotely willing to call Israel out, he would get it. from a lot of these Jewish leaders who are betraying their own people, of course, who are condemning Israel to an endless cycle of violence by not demanding better from their country or the country they view as their country. But hey, that's where we are. And all of this stuff is just so friggin' upsetting. So now to another story that sucks, right? Really, really sucks. And I, again, cannot fathom this. This really, I won't say it broke my heart, this story, but it very, very much upset me. I'm on one of the old radio station back in Monterey. I did at least one show, maybe a few on organized or on casino gambling and how bad it is and how much harm it causes. And, so I learned a lot about it and how it bankrupts people. I think Chuck yesterday talked about Ed Rendell's role and how bad his role has been in casino gambling and how harmful what Ed Rendell did to the state. How much harm he did to the state by championing casinos. So we're seeing the exact same dynamic here in Maryland. And, I tried to get, I organized for Our Revolution for 4 years, and I was very involved in the state group. And I really, there was a lot of things I really believed in about what Our Revolution was doing. But I left because it became very much a group, identity politics driven, and very much driven by in revenues. We've got to raise money. We got to keep raising money. We've got to figure out campaigns that will generate income for us. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I believed that many others felt the same way, that the goal, the reason we were there, the reason I was there, the reason I was part of that group in the first place was to fight against organized money, like the casinos. Among the worst people on the planet. We're going to go through the harm that casinos do. But these are just terrible, terrible people, the owners and operators of these gambling establishments. And now you have two Democrats, Ron Watson in the Senate and Vanessa Atterbury in the House. This is in the Maryland General Assembly, who are pushing legalized gambling online. We do have casinos, but they're pushing it to be legal online. Now, the bill would not immediately legalize gambling. What online casino gambling would do is put it on the ballot in November in a referendum. Now, why is that so bad? You might say, well, let the voters decide. And I would kind of say that. But how come the voters don't get to decide, for example, if we have Medicare for all? Because I think most voters in Maryland would support it. We had like Healthy Maryland on the ballot. How come that's never on the ballot? How come no senator and House delegate are leading the charge for Medicare for all to put it on the ballot? And with lots of support from leadership, because these bills are getting support from leadership. That's why they're going to get passed. Because the leadership is getting money from the casino industry, as are almost certainly. Now, I've got to be careful. I don't want to libel anyone. Maybe they're not. I haven't looked at their statement. So maybe the casino industry isn't lining the pockets of Senator Watson and Delegate Atterbury. But I wonder if they're not, why they're doing this. Because it's not good for their constituents. Not at all. Not in the least. It's a terrible, terrible thing that they're doing. Okay, so if this goes on the ballot, you could say, well, voters can vote it down. And yes, we can, and maybe we will. But if this is on the ballot in November in Maryland, there's going to be an incredible amount of advertising, wall to wall on TV for this bill to pass it. But Maryland needs the money. Maryland this will create jobs, which it won't. This will, allow us to spend more money on schools. Sure, but you could spend more money on schools if you raise taxes on the wealthy, and you wouldn't be bankrupting people and creating suicides and raising the crime rate at the same time. So if this gets through, the General Assembly and it's passed, and I think the governor says he'll sign it, then it'll be on the Democrats because they're the ones behind this. They're the ones championing. And in fact, yeah, and the Republicans are against it. So here's House Delegate Atterbury saying, oh yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do the right thing. We're going to send this bill to the Senate, where it will very possibly pass. It has, I believe, the support, as I said, of House leadership. I tried to get the Our Revolution team in Maryland, hey, this is something you can fight. You have the resources. I don't do it anymore. Remember, I left the group. You have the resources. You can reach out to members across the state and say, call your delegate. You get a lot of calls. You get a letter campaign saying this is wrong. Don't do it. Don't support it. Then maybe, just maybe, they'll vote it down. Maybe. But there's no appetite. And a big reason there's no appetite to fight this is because it's supported by the Democrats. I also think people don't really get how evil, how pernicious casino gambling is, how destructive it is. So, yeah, we talked about Atterbury and we talked about Watson. They're pushing this bill. I'll talk a little bit more about them in a bit, but I want to focus now on just, really go through just how bad casino gambling is. Now, the online bill would allow you could play slots online, right? You could have like a sort of a virtual slot machine, right? Where you have you have a bank account connected to or a credit card connected to your casino account. And you can play the slots wherever you are. You're on a train, play the slots. You're at home watching sports, play the slots. Blackjack, play whatever it is. And this is, you cannot overstate. I cannot overstate just how awful this would be. So let's go through the pathologies associated with it. First of all, this is from Humanities and Social Sciences Communication Journal last year, August 2nd, less than a year old. So they looked at poverty levels that result when you have casinos open. And I am suspicious of this article. I believe this article may well have been commissioned by the casino industry, the gambling industry, although the conclusion would not be one they would like. But the way it's parsed, the language is parsed, it seems to really go out of its way, the authors go out of their way not to be too critical of the casino industry and to try to come up with excuses and to parse it. But let's just get right into the actual what they concluded in that journal there. So I outlined in blue and highlighted it because it's so important. Higher poverty level outcome scores were reported at closer distances, and they call that high casino proximity. So you have to kind of understand what they're saying, but what they're saying is if you're near a casino, your poverty rate is going to be higher. And why would that be? Because it's easy to go in there and drop the rent money at the gambling hall. And it's easy to just get sucked up because you're a gamaholic and you miss work because all you're doing is feeding money into the slot machine. So yeah, you're closer to a casino, you're more likely to be poor. And what are other reasons? Casinos suck up whatever money some of the people who live close to them have in their pockets. That means there's fewer stores, fewer restaurants, except maybe in the casino, where they practically give away the food and booze because that'll make you go to the casino and gamble where they make their money. So the neighborhoods are destroyed by the casino. The casinos take the money out of the people's pockets, and they're poor. Now, one of the arguments that the casinos tried to push, and I think that's what this article really was trying to examine, and they couldn't vindicate the argument. That's what's funny about this, ironic, is the casino said, well, yeah, maybe it's true that when we first move into a neighborhood, some of the people go a little crazy and they spend more money than they should, and so then maybe they're impoverished for a little bit. Maybe business goes down in neighboring stores, which hurts the neighborhood. But in the end, it all comes back, right? It's called, what do they say? They acclimate to it, or it rebounds a little bit. But no, the same reported scores, in other words, poverty scores for year 1 and year 5. So it doesn't change. It doesn't improve. And so they say, despite the lifespan of the casino could influence poverty levels. So poverty levels will stay high. Now, that's why I say the writing, it's so oblique and it's so hard to follow what they're actually saying that I feel like they wrote this trying to placate their sponsors, the casino industry. But you can't get away from the bottom line conclusion. Closer to a casino, more poverty. And it doesn't get better over time. Now, that said, what this bill would do, the online casino bill would do, is it would allow you, if it's passed by the voters, and again, there'll be tremendous pressure from the casino industry. There's going to be op-eds saying, oh, this will be good for our schools. It means we can raise more money for schools, for education, without raising taxes. But what's the matter with higher taxes on the billionaire class and the multimillionaire class? There's a lot of rich people in Maryland. Higher taxes on them would be good for this economy. But you won't hear that from the newspapers. You won't hear that in the ads for the gambling industry. So the thing is, if you're close to a casino, you're more likely to be poor anywhere. What this bill will do will put everyone, a casino in everyone's living room. That's what the Maryland General Assembly, with enormous Democratic majorities, is trying to do. Put a casino in every single Marylander's living room. Yeah, they're better than Republicans. Yeah, they're the good guys. I mean, come on. Come on. I mean, really? Come on. That's just a friggin' joke. All right, go ahead. Call in if you can, if you're there. 240-242-5646. And don't forget, always like, always subscribe. So that's what they call it, adaptation. Just want to say this. Exposure to a casino can have adverse consequences. I want to get this. Again, the language is so minimal. It's so weak that it does suggest to me that the writers really didn't want to piss off their sponsors. Suggests exposure to casino can have adverse consequences based on the increase in poverty level outcome scores, and adaptation which could occur, was not indicated. And look, they write it so poorly due to the negligibility of poverty level scores between year 1 and year 5. What they mean is the negligibility of any change or reduction. In other words, poverty didn't go down. People didn't adapt to the casino. It's like if there's a giant shark in the neighborhood, if you're a fish and a shark moves in, the first few days, the shark's going to eat a lot of the fish in that area. But they adapt, right? So they figure out, well, maybe I better hide behind this coral reef, at least until it's completely bleached by the climate catastrophe. So the fish adapt, but it doesn't happen in the neighborhood. The neighborhood stays poor. Once the casino moves in, the neighborhood stays poor. And now, of course, this bill will put a casino in everyone's living room. And I could easily say it won't matter to me. It's good for me. My taxes won't go up. What do I care? That could be my attitude. I'm not a gamaholic. I find it incredibly unpleasant and stressful and nerve-wracking to gamble. So I'm not going to do it. So what do I care if suckers and chumps do? Better for me. No. It's as bad as this bill is. I mean, in terms of poverty and the like, there's another victim, the employees at the casinos. Because now people are going to be like, I don't have to go down to that casino. I don't get in my car and drive down there or walk over there. or take a bus over there. I can lose my, all my money in the comfort of my living room before I have to hock all my furniture. So the employees at the casinos are going to lose jobs, which, by the way, is a big reason, not the only. The casinos themselves like the online gambling because there's more of it, but also because they'll be able to cut their staff. They'll have fewer people, and the fewer pit bosses, fewer waiters, servers, croupiers. They'll all lose jobs, a lot of them. So how is this possibly a good thing? It just isn't. Just awful. So let's go through again some of the more pathologies. We just saw it. Poverty increases near casinos, and this bill will put casinos by all of them, in everyone's living room. It's not just poverty. The other pathologies that we're going to look at include suicide, bankruptcy, which is part of poverty, obviously, but a specific form of poverty in the sense that you get more suicides, and then here. So Frontiers in Psychiatry, this is from last year. Gambling-related suicides and suicidality. So what do they conclude? And there you go. Let's get that fully on the screen for you. The quantitative occurrence of suicide attempts, suicides, and self-harm among gamblers is positive. I mean, who could have seen that coming? You lose all your money in a casino, and then you jump off a bridge. You consign your family to living in a car until you have to hock the car. Yeah. I think some people are going to kill themselves when that happens. So thank you, Maryland Democrats, for championing casino gambling. And the list just goes on and on. We have the highest incidence of suicide in Las Vegas. Suicides in Atlantic City have gone up, in the past 45 years since it was made legal. It's also important to realize it's not just like old people or people who have, the kind of the stereotype of like the kind of the pathetic loser in the casino, or the old lady with her Dixie cup with the nickels in it. This destroys young people. So that article, Frontiers in Psychiatry, related comorbidities or conditions have also been systematically mapped in young people. So people's lives from youth on are ruined. And I've seen this. I mean, look, my kids, they like to bet on sporting events. And as far as I can tell, and I'm really trying to keep an eye on this, and they're adults, so there's not much I can do. But, they don't spend a lot. They're very low. They spend very little. You can kind of do that with sports a little bit. You could still lose your shirt. But when it becomes casino gambling, the slots, they just take it. They'll just take your shirt, your pants, and everything else. Very, very quickly. So again, this is what will happen if we legalize online casino gambling. We're going to get more suicides. We're going to get more poverty. And, the increases go up 100% or more. So in Sweden, they say a 1.8-fold increase in mortality and a 15-fold increase in suicide mortality. So in general mortality, if they have a gambling disorder, you're more likely to die, period. Maybe you die from depression, from a heart attack, from a stroke. You're not healthy because you're sitting at those goddamn tables all day long. But you're really more likely to just kill yourself. 15%, at 15 times more likely to kill yourself, according to the Swedish study. And I note that it's likely, now I can't prove this, I haven't seen the studies, but my guess is in the United States, you'd see an even higher suicide rate than in Sweden, because at least in Sweden there's a very tight safety net, and if you lose your family's money, well, they're still going to have health care, right? They're still probably going to have a place to live. There's still going to be a lot of resources available to you in Sweden, but here you're on your own. Other pathologies directly related to this scourge that the Maryland Democrats are championing. And again, this is a major reason I can't even organize with like groups like Our Evolution, because they will not. They are simply unwilling. I had a guy tell me flat out, because, well, I'm sort of a libertarian. If people want to lose all their money stupidly at the casino, well, that's their decision. Yeah. Is it? Okay. Maybe it is, right? But what about the impact on their families if they go bankrupt? What about the impact on their family if they kill themselves? What about the impact on their neighborhood that's now impoverished? That's not just me making a decision to take all the money out of my bank accounts and give them to the casino. There's a lot more to it than just, oh, you were stupid, or you're sick, you're a gamaholic. And by the way, let's just say that is the reason. Let's say you are addicted. Do we want to let these thugs just take money from sick people? Because that's what's happening. Bankruptcies. Yeah, they go up. Gee, what a shock. What a surprise. Here you go. And it's, and again, so this is all done before a lot of these studies, before there was online gambling. So the focus is on communities. But now that there's a saturation point and there are casinos everywhere you go. So what's the next step? Well, if you're the casino owner, let's get into the house. Let's get into the house. And moreover, we get in the house, we can fire a lot of our overpriced unionized labor. Local impact is far more pronounced when it comes to bankruptcies. Of course, the closer you are to a casino, the easier it is to go in there and lose your money. Not just bankruptcy, not just suicide, not just poverty, also crime. Casino proximity, the closer you are to a casino, the more likely there's going to be violent crime in the area. And this is not just like they put casinos in lousy neighborhoods where there was already crime. It's that they turn the neighborhoods. And we'll get into that specific. So this is from Casinos, Crime, and Community Costs. Review of Economics and Statistics, February 2006. It's really, really scary what these casinos do. What they do to a state, a neighborhood, a city, what they do. It's kind of the opposite. Remember we talked about the poverty rate? When this casino first moves into a neighborhood, it gets poorer right away. That's because the people who are addicts discover it relatively soon and they start blowing their money there. There's no adaptation because the addicts keep going back. And therefore, the poverty rate stays high, stubbornly high. But this isn't true for crime. It's a little different. When the casinos first open in a neighborhood, the crime rate doesn't really tend to go up by very much. There could be countervailing effects from maybe there's some hiring, right? Because casinos do hire people, so more people working, they're less likely to be out there committing crimes, which is good. But what happens is, and I just correct that spelling error there, it's average. I actually copied and pasted this from the article. But this is verbatim. I didn't change one word. But over time, as people lose their money, they lose what they had, they bankrupt, they empty their bank accounts, they start committing crimes. That's just that simple, right? They start hurting their neighbors. They start hurting people on the street. And one place where they have real specific data, and I was, helpful for me to see this and share with you, was Florida. So they have very specific reporting, very good data from Florida apparently. Between 77 and 95 last millennium, last century, Florida counties that opened casinos experienced greater growth than non-casino counties. And listen to the crimes: murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, and auto theft. And the numbers are very significant. So 20% higher murder, almost 30% higher rape. That's interesting. I wonder why rape would go up, but it does. I think the streets are empty. I think the reason for that is because people who previously were on the street going to different restaurants, small businesses, and the like, now they're in the casinos, or they're impoverished. They can't even spend the money. And then auto theft is almost double. Of course it is, because you steal the car so you can get money to pay your casino debt, or to, so that the next time you can go into the casino. So what we see is casino gambling is associated with a number of very, very serious pathologies. And the one of the few positive impacts of it, maybe some jobs in the casino will be lost by the online casino gambling bill championed by Atterbury and Watson, whereas all the negative impacts will simply become even more diffuse throughout the state. So who are they? So I got a picture of them, and what are you going to do? I mean, these are two members of the Legislative Black Caucus here in Maryland. Top is Ron Watson, bottom is Vanessa Atterbury. And I wanted to just highlight that. So they're both members of the Maryland Black Caucus, and I feel like that's kind of important, and it's ironic for several reasons. But I want to just tell you what the purpose of according to the Black Caucus, why it's there in the first place. So it was created back in 1970. I think it's the largest state Black Caucus. I'm sure there are other states that have more African-American legislators because we're not the biggest state, but maybe there aren't. But the percentage is very high in Maryland. It's over 50 years old. The purpose of it is to act as a legislative body on behalf of the Black community and to address the constituent needs and examine bills that affect the Black populace. And specifically, the caucus presents a Black perspective and advocates public policies that promote Black progress. This is from their website, the Legislative Black Caucus. So if that's true, are we supposed to believe Senator Watson and Delegate Atterbury that you're promoting the interests of your community by increasing suicides, bankruptcies, poverty, and crime? Because that's what you're doing. And if you were to promote higher taxes, because I think the argument they'll make is, well, better the casinos taking money from voluntary transactions between adults, although if it's online in the home, I don't know that's going to necessarily be adults. But better the casinos take the money from people who voluntarily are willing to play and maybe win every now and then, somebody wins, than that we raise taxes. No, it's not. But if you promoted a higher top marginal tax rate, if you supported raising the income tax on wealthy Marylanders, then you wouldn't even be really hurting your constituents because African Americans are not as affluent generally, and don't comprise the richest Marylanders. Some are very wealthy. The governor, Wes Moore, is very rich. He's black, but most disproportionately, the richest people in the state are not African American. And if you wanted to improve the quality of life in your communities, and as you say, you're a member of the Black Caucus, so you're supposed to be, specifically promoting black progress, you wouldn't be doing any harm to that if you raise taxes on wealthy white people. You can't say only white people pay the higher taxes, but those are the people who would pay the tax, by and large. But no, they're carrying water for the casino industry. And it's not just Atterbury. I don't want to just blame Atterbury and Watson. They deserve a lot of the blame, but also the Senate leadership, Bill Ferguson, the House leadership. They're going to, I'm sure, push this bill right through. And now I'll have to hear and watch a whole bunch of awful ads by the casino industry lying to me and lying to my fellow Marylanders about how great online casino gambling will be. If you're in Maryland, don't fall for it. Don't fall for that crap. All right, that's going to do it for today. That's going to do it for this week. I hope you have a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday at some point with Arlen, and talk to you then.